And we're live.
Hello, guys. Welcome back. This is David here, and we're going to have a very interesting night, I hope. First of all, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. It is Valentine's Day, so hopefully maybe you're with your Valentine, or at least you've prioritized that, and you can enjoy this later. So we'll be, wait a minute.
No. I just wanted to say something really quick.
Go.
I'm streaming out of my laptop for long story short, some technical issues. So if there's any issues, please let me know.
Yeah, so let us know. I guess let's check sound, all that stuff. Everything's good. Moving ahead.
It sounds good to me, but I want to see what they say.
All right, good.
But
all right.
Keep moving forward until they say something.
Okay, so today we are going to have kind of an interesting podcast. We are going to talk about me specifically, and it's something I've held off doing. If you happen to be a Patreon, you may have sort of followed some of the stories. On Patreon, we have kind of story time with David, and sometimes it's my past, sometimes we talk strategy or different stories on the game. I've had a very interesting life, to say the least. In fact, just to keep you interested, used to have a network TV anchor who was interested in profiling my life story. So I will tell you that when I happened to be homeless some years ago, I was one of the very first residents of Covenant House in Hollywood Boulevard. In fact, I still have my driver's license that's on Sunset Boulevard. And if we get enough people who like this, who thumbs up this, I will continue this series. We're kind of just trying this, see if anybody cares. And then if so, I have sort of the artifacts of my life, so to speak. And so I'd be more than happy to share that, and we'll go from there. So I did this interview some years ago. I'm going to kind of go into it in a minute, but I was homeless at the time. I moved into the Covenant House in Hollywood off of Sunset Boulevard, and it was a sort of a drop-in shelter. And if you guys remember, Lily Tomlin came through and toured the place, and Mayor Bradley. And at the time, I was very sober. I was there as a victim of bad luck. And I'm going to share with you some of the really bad luck that's also given me a very diverse life experience leading to now that played a role. And this was sort of, the catalyst into many other things, and lots of interesting sort of stories along the way, and how I ended up in Vegas. So I'm going to start. All right, everything good before I start? All right, good. So again, thank you for being part of this. And if I sound a little nervous, strangely enough, talking about myself makes me a little nervous. Obviously, introspection and looking, for acceptance is always hard. In fact, I'm not someone who even reads the comments. I'll tell you that, I don't like the negativity that exists. So, I think when people put their life out there, it can be tough. Over the last couple of years, I've shared a lot of these experiences on Patreon, which is kind of a safe space because it's our fans and people who are sort of interested in our journey. But I'm happy to share a little bit of it with you today, and we'll go from there. Do I have to thank anybody? Is there anybody?
No, just start telling the
Go.
story.
All right. So it starts really. I'm 18 years old. Actually, I'm 17 years old. I'm living in Marlborough, Massachusetts at the time, and quite a few things before that happened, leading up to me have not being able to confront the reality of my life. So I had a number of people that passed away within a short period of time, and it caused kind of, I would say, a split. And I believe it was sort of the beginning of an endless road of running away and not confronting things and making lots of bad choices. But of course, when this happened, I decided to get in my car and drive, quite literally, through Mexico into Guatemala City. I literally had an Escort GT at the time, and I drove from essentially Boston, Massachusetts, if you're familiar, and you can trace it all the way down. I drove through, went into Texas. I went over Eagle Pass. I was confronted there by Border Patrol, and I had a Mexican Border Patrol police officer or a Mexican Border Patrol person say, listen, if you're an American, you need to go down with a weapon. You need to have a weapon on you. So, of course, I bought a gun illegally as I went over the border, and with it came some ammunition and things like this. And there's this whole experience I have, by the way, of driving through Mexico was not easy, as you can imagine. I was with somebody at the time, but I'm only 17 years old. I'm in this Escort GT. I was chased down by some police in Mexico City. Of course, my car was searched umpteen times by the federales. At one point, I was at risk of going to jail. Ultimately, I made it all the way to Acapulco, and then over the border into Guatemala, and then into Guatemala City, of which, while I was going over the border in Guatemala, my car ended up getting 2 bullet holes. At the time, if you do a little research, you'll find out, which I didn't know because I didn't look this up, and internet wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Guatemala was in the middle of a revolution. So technically, it was illegal for me to have gone over the border in the first place, but I managed to meet a trucker from New York who helped me get into a convoy with my vehicle. And, we had very specific instructions. When we went over the border, we were given a map and told, listen, you don't stop for any federale depots that aren't listed on this page, because the rebels at the time were setting up these fake federale stations, and you were supposed to just go through 100, 120 miles an hour, whatever, as fast as you could. And I end up in Guatemala City. I live there with this family. We come under attack a few times, but it ends up being one of the greatest experiences, by the way, of my life. Looking back on it now, at the time, it was hair-raising, but the experience of living there and being immersed, like I was immersed not for want, but for fact. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of resources. I wasn't someone of means. I wasn't even old enough in many cases to interact at a certain level. And so here I was in Guatemala City. So I ended up, my goal at the time, because of course I was disconnected from reality, was to sell my car and try to keep going. I wanted to go into Central America, South America, and then maybe over to Africa, and just again, I share this because this was kind of a foundational. I would do this to myself over and over and over again throughout the course of my life, until, quite frankly, I became a much older person, and I experienced some success here in Vegas. So as I have many stories along the way, I'm going to kind of abbreviate them as we go and get to a little more of the highlights. But I come back from Guatemala. I'm unable to sell my car because it's illegal and no one wants to do that. And so I end up back in the States. I actually had to borrow money. I had to go to the American consulate in Acapulco to borrow money. I'd run out of money. I was robbed at gunpoint in Acapulco by local police officers who took me up to the hills and threatened to kill me and my friend. And throughout the course, so they stole everything I had, even my water. I had jugs of water in my car, and they stole my knife. And strangely, the one thing that no one ever took or found were these bullets that I had. The gun had already been taken by another police officer, many moons earlier, Monclova, I believe. But the bullets, they were good. I was good to go with the bullets. So I had to borrow it was $150 US dollars, which at the time was 220,000 pesos. And I was able to use that money because, if you didn't already know, if you get stuck as an American outside of the U.S., the U.S. government will loan you the money to get back home. But they won't loan you enough money to get all the way back home. What they do is they will calculate it out to get you to the border, and ultimately that's what I did. I was able to get back to the Mexican-U.S. border. I went back over Nuevo Laredo. I came in over Eagle Pass. I went back over Nuevo Laredo, and then I made it ultimately back to Boston. Well, so strangely enough, or not strangely enough, I ended up with a lot of, I had to catch up with a lot of issues, let's just say. I had rented a house, which I wasn't paying on. This car was in default. The kid that was with me on this journey, his parents, he was 21 years old. The parents accused me of kidnapping. I mean, it was a never-ending thing that I came home to. And so the Army was there. And so it was recommended that I go into the Army, and so I did. I entered into the Army. I went to Boston MEP Station. And interestingly, I did well. I tested well in my ASVAB, but I really wanted to go into infantry. I wasn't interested in, at the time, spending a lifetime in the Army. I wasn't trying to be recruited into a high-tech thing. I wanted to learn how to protect myself and live off the land, that kind of thing. So I opted to go and become, of all things, 11 Bravo. Simple as that. Nothing special. I did become a 11 Bravo Charlie 2, which was a dragon gunner. And so that was my interest. I went to Fort Benning, basic training. Did both my basic training, AIT there. And again, a lot of stories mixed in there. I saw what could be done with ping pong balls for the first time in my life, so that was fun. And I was open to many new experiences on Atlanta, because you go to Atlanta, you get out of Fort Benning, you get your first 2 weeks off between basic and AIT, and you learn things as a kid. You learn things, and I was a pretty naive kid, and then I learned a lot in 2 weeks. So it was a thing. So. From there, I was deployed to Fort Ord, California, 7th Infantry Division, and I worked there, and I became very adept as an RTO. So they slapped a radio on my back, which at that time weighed 65 pounds. So now we have a lot of high-tech communication, doesn't weigh a lot, but boy, did it weigh a lot. My full ruck was my backpack, 85 pounds loaded up. And so I went up the ranks as a radio telephone operator, ultimately becoming Division Net, and there you go. All right. After my military career, I exited, and I exited on good terms. I was honorably discharged. I won't go into that whole experience. I'm going to save that for another day. But ultimately, I had a friend of mine who we both met in a hospital at Silas B. Hayes at Fort Ord, and he was in the Defense Language Institute. And he was going through some amazing trauma at the time. The Army, I wouldn't say the Army specifically, but the military ultimately decided to cut ties with this individual and release him, even though he still had a lot of outstanding issues. But we had become friends, and so he was with me. It was a very difficult time. Again, this is one of those things where I won't share too much about, but we ended up leaving the military together. We ended up in Santa Barbara, and his mother calls me. You know what? I'll tell you. He was very suicidal. He was very, this young man did not want to stay alive. Did not want to be a member of the human race. I mean, it was very difficult. The conversations from him were very difficult to manage, and created a very difficult experience. But with me, I became kind of his safe space, and we had this very sort of collaborative kind of friendship. It was quite something. We're in Santa Barbara, and I had gone to Santa Barbara with the hopes of getting a job. I was offered a job working for a telephone company because of my background doing retrans, working with satellite radios, that kind of thing. When I get there, I was basically told I wasn't smart enough because I was 11 Bravo. And if you're not familiar with the military, 11 Bravo is kind of like, base level MOS, which is, what your job. You don't need a whole lot to be, you do need a whole lot to be 11 Bravo, just to be clear. No one has to, and not everybody has special forces or everybody has this high-tech job. Some people, are running refuel trucks, and some people just are, slinging a radio like me, so, and it takes a lot. It's not easy work, right? But when it comes to the intellectual requirements that the perception is that for being 11 Bravo is low, and so ultimately I was quite literally told that I wouldn't meet the intellectual requirements of the job that I was supposed to get. So ultimately there was no job. And, Santa Barbara is expensive now, and it was expensive then. And I was with somebody who was having difficulties dealing with life. And I was stuck at this motel. It was a weekly motel. And I got no options. I don't know where to go from here. I have no friends. I have no family. I have some friends, but they're high school friends. I have friends from high school or friends, And the last time I spoke with them, I was on my way to Mexico and Guatemala. And then when I came back, it was straight to the military. So ultimately, here I am with this young man. We're both relatively young. And his mother calls me, or his mother reaches out to us, not on a with no cell phone. So he calls his mother, and I end up speaking with his mother, and she wants him to come home. And I tell him, dude, you can't go home, man. Your mother can't help you, right? I mean, as much as that might seem, I mean, let's just say it did not work out well, in the end. I mean, he left me and his safe space was gone, and the very things he had run from in the first place, he had to go back and confront, and ultimately did not go well for him. And it was a very, very difficult time in my life. And through this, I'm walking down the street. I'm in Santa Barbara. There's this really cool picture of sort of I don't know where it is in Santa Barbara specifically, but it's right next to the ocean where you can see, how some of these, I was literally right there, that picture. I wanted to share it with you, but, it's a podcast. But anyways, I'm walking down the street and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me and says, "Are you happy with your life?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not happy with my life." And is like, are you a perfect human being? And I'm like, no, I'm not a perfect human being. And ultimately, if you have run into these guys before, they were selling Dianetics and Scientology. And they're like, "Well, come in here, sir. We'll test your personality and figure out how you're defective and how we can fix you." And it sounds, and in where I was in life, I mean, I had nothing else to do literally that day. And I had really nothing else to do in that lifetime. At that moment, I was just purely available. So I go into this place, and of course, if you've ever been to one of these, please don't sue me, Scientology. Just please don't sue me. If you've ever been to, we call them, I ended up working in Scientology. They're called Class 4 orgs, and the idea is to get you in and get you invested, buy books, buy lessons. And so here I am. I get on the cans. And yep, of course, like every other person that's ever been in there, got personality defects. And so here's the fix and the books, and I can go pure and clear, become an operating thetan, all these things. And it sounds so interesting. And on top of it, I'm a big fan of L. Ron Hubbard. Up until then, I had no idea he did anything but write science fiction. He wrote Battlefield Earth, the series. And I was I had read it as a kid and I was a big fan. I never ran into Dianetics, but here we go, Dianetics. And they're like, "Well, listen, we got this van. We got this van. We got a van. It's heading up to LA. You can jump in the van and, hang out with us for a little bit." And I'm like, "Sure." Sounds like a great time. My friend is off to see his mom, and I'm off to who knows where. Got no plans, got no passion, just really don't care at this point. Just need to move forward. Ultimately, I show up at the Church of Scientology. I sit down with this sort of job counselor. I don't know what the hell they call it. And they talk me in. They talk a relatively sane person, okay, into a lifetime contract of servitude for Sea Org. And that's as close to, and if you've followed any of this stuff, and apologize if any of you Scientologists are offended. Luckily, there's not as many of you as there used to be. But here's what I signed up for, strangely enough. You work 6.5 days of the week. They give you half of Sunday to wash your clothes and get some free time to read a book, preferably one of their books. And you get paid an entire $30 a week. That's how much I was paid. $30 every week to be a member of Sea Org. And you wake up 6:30, and you don't go to bed until 11 o'clock. I lived in let's just say this. I was more comfortable being in the field as an infantry person with an 85-pound ruck than ever I was in Sea Org. I came into this, they moved me into these sort of barrack apartment thing on Fountain Avenue in Hollywood. So it's like Fountain, and I forget what all the cross streets are, but these cots were three high. And I mean, not all that well constructed. I mean, you didn't know what, ultimately you just wanted to be on the top bunk, okay? In the event that these things collapsed, and you'd kill the other two people underneath you. But you know what? You're okay. You're good. You can make it through to the next day. It was crazy. And, it's interesting, but for the first month, I was relatively happy here. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing. I guess I didn't take too much interest in my surroundings. I was just around a lot of people who were really engaged. I showed up at these classes where they teach you for free, they say, because you get free instruction. With that $30 comes with lots of free instruction. So you're in school essentially for a big part of that day. And the school is indoctrination. It's nothing but that. I mean, it's not a school. You're not learning math. You're not learning science. You're learning, you have to praise this L. Ron Hubbard picture up on the thing, up on the wall. They do this clay modeling to help you. If you weren't already, completely convinced Scientology was the next greatest thing on the planet, and then the rest of it is literally just constant indoctrination. But I did meet a lot of really interesting people. Even though they were batshit crazy, they were still very interesting and created quite the experience. And it was something to see the celebrity, so the celebrity element. So here, one of my first stories is the kid in Neverending Story. I don't know if you for those of you a little older, Neverending Story came out when I was younger. And there was a kid that rode that dragon. Well, that kid was part of a family with Scientology, and you would see him running past Bridge Publications. I ran into a few times, and he was lost to the world. I don't know if he's. I mean, I guess he's still around, but wow, holy smoke! So, if you don't already know or haven't dealt with that, we'll get to that one quickly. But in Scientology, kids are there as a separate person. You know, the family unit is not something that's really promoted. You know, if you have a kid, they're there, you know, you happen to be their parent, and then they need to move on to other things. So there's a big disconnect between children and their parents. In many cases, you may have heard stories if you've followed any of the, you know, the recent reality shows that have come out about, again, Scientology, but it's very true. So the catalyst for me getting out of Scientology, strangely enough, was another young man, a little bit younger than me, whose family went down line. So it used to be in Scientology, if you were in Sea Org, you worked inside the church, and then ultimately, if you got promoted, you got to be a member of what they call when I was in, it was the Watchdog Org. It was a very secretive group of people that sort of oversaw the Sea Org. They were called the Watchdog Org. And then you went to a really secret place called Going Down Line. It was very secretive. No one knew where it was. They picked you up in a van, and you were never seen again. Well, my friend, his from New Zealand, by the way, his family decided to join this org and go down line, and he's a 17-year-old young man. And next thing you know, his parents are down line, never to be seen again, literally disappeared. And he's showing up at my door going, my parents went down line, and I have nowhere to go. And so, strangely, at the time, I had nowhere to go either. I had no place to stay. I was all part of Sea Org, but it started to break down what I thought was a safe place for me, what I saw as a future. Because if this is something that could happen to this person, and they were in fear of getting deported because they weren't a citizen of the United States. They were here temporarily, but the parents had taken off, and so ultimately he did get deported, and so there's that. But anyways, so I knew I needed to get out of the church. It wasn't just that, by the way. They started you do these clay demos of like every word. You open up the dictionary. It's a very strange thing. I can't even begin to explain some of the teachings, but you know, you have to clay demo the word the. Like as crazy as that sounds, that's exactly what we did. One of the things that they teach you is that we as humans get caught up in these little words and little things, and it makes us tired, and so we don't understand what's going around us because we don't understand we don't understand how the makes our life more productive, or I don't know. So it just started draining me, and ultimately I needed to get out. So my first answer to getting out was Sea Org, you sign a lifetime contract, you're in. I mean, you're committed. You're indentured, fully indentured. They give you those free courses. You owe them. You're going to become an operating Thadian. You're going to be able to leave your body and go visit Tom Cruise on some other planet just like that. That's money right there. That's money. You can't, you know what I mean? That's going to cost you a few years of your life easily. So, but yeah, I was out. I wasn't interested. It was getting too sci-fi for me, especially when you find out, you know, L. Ron's been dead since '85 or something like this. And one of the big stories is how he passed away, you know, smoking cigars and eating, you know, big, you know, whatever all his life. And he just decided to leave his body. And over all these years, he's still writing books. He's still publishing. He's still the mad publisher that he was, you know, when I was a kid. And it was just getting very disappointing. You know what I mean? So I knew I needed to get. So anyways, I meet this woman who's a little older than me. She's just a regular Scientologist. She's not in Sea Org. And my next story. So this is So Lisa Marie Presley, this is a story about, I was a huge fan of Elvis Presley when I was a kid. And I meet this woman, and her family's involved in rainbow vacuum cleaners. And one of you guys have to check this out because I know this. So I end up at this house in Glendale, and the idea is I'm going to try to get out of the church by connecting with one of these. So Scientology has a lot of families and people that are sort of higher profile and have money and do other stuff. So my hope was I'm going to meet one of these families, and they're going to help me move out of Sea Org into a business. And of all the businesses I could have picked, because I didn't know which business it was, I was going to be a rainbow vacuum cleaner salesperson. That was the goal. I mean, it really, at that point, I was in for almost anything. So I end up at this party in Glendale, in this house, and all of a sudden, someone comes and points to me. I know one person, this older woman, who I had met, who I was going to use to transition out of Sea Org, and she says, "Hi, this is Lisa," and I'm like, "Hi, Lisa," and turns her, it's Lisa Marie Presley. It's Lisa Presley with her first husband, who is a Scientologist, who owns this very regular home in Glendale, and we're just having a barbecue, just on any given Sunday. And she was very nice, very friendly. It was a very quick interaction, and she went away, and it was quite something. So I leave that a barbecue, and I head back to the church. And this woman, who a little bit older, she works with one of my supervisors, and amazingly, I'm able to spend a moment transitioning into her home. Okay. Now, come to find out, now I am 20 at this time, a late 20, and she is late 40s, give or take. And I'm in her home, and I'm on her couch, and I'm sleeping. And the next thing you know is she's on my couch sleeping too. And I realized that now I understand why the push to get me to move out of where I was into her house, because there were things I needed to do. There were errands I was going to have to run. And that was out. So as you can imagine, I didn't run quite screaming from the place, but let's just say I grabbed what I could. And that night was my first experience as an adult being homeless. And so I managed to make it to a friend of mine's house who was going to the Git Institute on Hollywood Boulevard, for those of you who remember that. And so I moved in with them, but wow, there was a lot of drugs, a lot of prostitution. It wasn't exactly a place for someone like myself to be. I already had a lot of issues fitting in, and this was just not making things easier. So ultimately, I left that house. And I moved to Santa Barbara. Not to Santa Barbara. I moved to Tustin in Orange County. Now, how are we doing? Good? All right. So I moved to Tustin in Orange County, and I move in with one of these guys, the guitar guy. He's like a studio producer, and he lives in this 3-bedroom, and there's all these dudes, and it's just, they're just drinking, and they're managing records, I guess. There's a lot of that, by the way. If you live in LA, there's a lot of creative people all trying to make a buck and trying to figure out ways to kind of figure things out and get laid and play music and it's this constant thing. So I end up I'm kind of the low bar. I don't have any real creative talent. I don't have any interest in the music industry. I don't share a lot of the things that are going on in this house, and so ultimately I end up working at a diner. I was working as a diner. And now, you might ask if the church tried to hound me down. I don't think that the answer is no. So I've never had any real negative interactions with the church. I say church, or with the Church of Scientology, after I left. I did later become involved in this forum to give people insight into my experience at the church. I was actually involved at Incom Sea Org. And I was the in-crew IC, so I had information about a lot of the Class 4 orgs and things that were going around. So I did share that, and I got some negativity and pushback. But for the most part, I think I was the low man on the totem pole. Like no one cared. Like David who, right? I mean, when they looked around and see I was there, I don't think anybody cared. And to be honest with you, that woman, I'm sure, was happy I just took off and didn't file her police report, because I could have filed a police report. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Needless to say, I'm in Tustin. I'm there for a couple months, and I come home one day, and there's a note that's posted on the door to me. Welcome home, David. We've decided to leave. We've decided to leave Tustin and return to Chicago. And we took your. So this is about the 15th. I had already paid rent, and as you can imagine, I was working at this dive diner, making nothing. All my money went to rent. I mean, literally. Amazingly, I had a girlfriend at the time, and that was the rest of it. I mean, literally rent, and then not rent. So they're like, yeah, we decided to take your rent in lieu of the deposit you owed us. Meanwhile, they're bailing. They're literally bailing. They're not. They had apparently had deposits, but they're bailing. I don't know. Very confusing. So I walk in, and the only thing that's left are a bag of potatoes and about 5 or 6 cans of peas. And I have, at this point, I'm really not sure what I can do or how I can stay. I hadn't even accumulated any real furniture. I was still sleeping on the floor. All I had left was, some of the things I got out of the military with. And then, here I am in this apartment. I don't have the money for rent. I'm going to be evicted. So I'm just waiting for them to put the notice on the door and move on. And this is, pre-woker. Nowadays it takes forever. People can squat. You can be there for months, dude. You can fight it and refight it and refile and come up with new names and not answer the door. But back then they just came in and took your ass out. Like none of that was a thing. You don't live here, get the hell out. So I had a bit of a countdown. I had about 3 days. I felt like I could live on these potatoes and peas, and then I had to figure out what to do, but I had no money. And because there was no food, and I had already given up my money, I mean, literally had no money. I mean, I once this food was gone, I don't think I could have even gone to work. Despite working at a diner, they still made you pay, and you had to pay to eat. So it was a thing. So ultimately, I decided I needed to head back to Hollywood. I felt like that was the place that I had the best chance of, if I was going to be homeless, it was the best chance I had to survive. And if you're asking me where my family is at this time, I do have family. That's its other story. So there's a lot of truth that's left out here. I grew up in a middle to upper class family who opted out of their son's life, and it just was what it was. And I'll add that in there in a minute. But so I'm in Tustin, and I got to figure out how to get to Hollywood. And there's this little bike that ends up outside of. It's been there forever, outside of my door. And up until this point, I had never stolen anything in my entire life. I really, despite whatever else I was going through, I'd never taken anything that wasn't mine. I never, I was that guy who was at the store, got too much change and went back and gave them back the extra change. Or if they shorted me, I was back there too. You know what I mean? I felt like it was a two-way street. But so there's this little kid's bike, and I had seen it next to my place this whole time, maybe abandoned, who knows? But I literally grabbed as much stuff as I can, and what I did was I wore everything. So I had like 10, and it's the middle of it's summerish, it's hot, and I have literally piles and piles of clothes on. And luckily, BDUs, they got big pockets. BDUs, by the way, is the camouflage pants and the shirt and things like this, and they have big pockets. And I was able to fill those up with everything. And I'm on this little kid's bike, and I rode that bike from Tustin to Hollywood, California. I mean, I literally rode that bike because I couldn't afford to get on a bus. I didn't have any money. In fact, there was one point where I had pulled over, and I tried to get a bus to stop and take me the rest of the way, thinking I can just get on, beg for mercy, and get up, because I was beat. And don't you know that the bus didn't even stop for me? I mean, they saw me. I must have looked ridiculous. I'm sure I did. And that bus just kept going, and that was the end of it. There was one point where I felt like I could have gone a little bit further north on that bus. It just didn't happen. So I get to Hollywood sometime around 4 a.m, and there happens to be a McDonald's close across the street from where I was going, and I was heading to Covenant House, which I had already talked to someone, and his name is Steve Duran. I will never forget this man's name. But he was managing this drop-in shelter for the Covenant House. And if you're not familiar with the Covenant House, it's sort of this famous shelter for people that are homeless or in transition. And it helps kids that sort of fall through the cracks, that are between a certain age group where they age out of foster home, but they're yet still not quite adults. And so it's very difficult. And if you don't already know, homelessness obviously is rampant throughout the United States. It's the color of I wouldn't say color, but the dynamics of homelessness have changed a lot. But when I was younger and this was happening to me, it was very difficult. So if you were over 18, if you were under 21, there was a lot of men's shelters that wouldn't take you because you were essentially not 21, right? And they were dealing with crisis. So at the same time, you had to be under 18 to get into these other. So if you were between 18 and 21, there wasn't a place for you. There wasn't a lot of resources you can get to, like, at least right away. Like, you can go through the state and file for things, but it was this whole process. I needed help like right away. And if you're asking why I wasn't out there working, because there were no cell phones, there was no internet, and where I was living in Orange County, you needed a car. And if you've been to LA, you need a car for lots of things anyways. Yes, there's public transportation, but you need money. I had $0. I didn't just have $1, $2, $5. I had $0 and no food. And I knew I needed just a transition. I needed somewhere to sleep so I can get to work. So I end up in LA and I end up in Hollywood. I meet one of the most amazing people that also helped to, I would say, soften the blow a little. So here I am at McDonald's. Should I go into that story? You know the story. Should I share that story?
It's up to you.
God, our public is so, you guys got.
While you decide, I do have some super chats.
Okay, go.
Lady Luck Travels gave us $5. Says, we consider you a good friend. So proud of you and what you have given the casino community, especially us D-gens.
Mm-hmm.
VA Crapshooter says, times will David lose his pants? Over, under, 4.
I'll lose my pants for you any time of the day, buddy. All right, go. What do you got? What else?
Gus,
yes.
Gave us $1.99.
Wow.
He's sitting on the couch.
He's sitting right here, buddy. You just hand it over, dude.
I'm going to butcher
Why are we
this.
paying the YouTube fees? What's the matter with you?
I'm going to butcher this word,
yeah,
but
go.
it says, what is your midichlorian level?
I have no idea what the hell that is, dude. Remember, I'm 11 Bravo, dude. I don't know anything. What? Scientology, where you hold the handles? Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't even know. I don't remember. Yeah, the cans. Yeah, being on the cans. Yeah. I don't know. You know that? South Park. Oh, from South Park? Yeah, by the way, South Park, that was very informational for a lot of people, man. That's how they learned a lot about Scientology. I mean, I'll be honest with you. So, so the question is, what was my level? So they have these levels that they will rate you on. That's one of the reasons I ended up on income, strangely enough. I guess I rated very high. And they try to determine, like, what's your potential loyalty, how long they think you'll be part of the community. I mean, it's a strange thing. If anything happens that's out of the ordinary, they send you back. You got to get back on the. I used to just call them the cans. I didn't really, a lot of the terminology I just never cared about. And but it's a very interesting dynamic, let me tell you. I mean, you get punished like all the time, and I think that's part of the gig is if you get punished enough, you realize you're not a very good person and you need help, and Scientology is there to help you. So I think that's like part of the program.
We just got one more super chat.
Okay.
Shooby Dooby, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
Says, what restaurant in Tustin?
So it was a diner on Red Hill Avenue. So it was literally right off the exit. I think it was the 5. It was the 5 or the 4 or 5. You get right off. And if you're going south, you used to be able to take a right, and there was a diner literally right there. Now, remember, this is over 30 years ago, but it was a diner. I don't remember. I think it was called the Red Hill Diner or, something like this. But that's where it was. And the ladies that worked, I was the only guy that worked there, and that guy had mercy on me when he hired me. He didn't want to hire me because he was literally like, dude, you know what I mean? Like, really? But I was like, and I would fight to get on the counter because that's where they made all the money. So many people would come in the morning and get coffee, leave a quarter, $1, whatever it was. You work those tables, dude. It was like $5. See, back then it was $5 for 3 people to eat, and then they leave you like 40 cents. It was ridiculous. At least with the coffee, you get a quarter for every coffee. I mean, you're just going all day long. But yeah, so I only worked there a couple months. What else?
That's it. You can go back to your story.
All right, where was I? All right, so I meet this person. You have to understand, I came into this world I think, a reasonably intelligent person. But my problem was I lacked a lot of passion. And as much as, for many of us, as we try to do the right things and try to make choices that are, constructive, I feel like the easy way out for me was always the exit, always looking for the exit. And as an adult, I was not well prepared to confront things head on. Like, I really wasn't. I lived mostly a very vanilla life as a kid. There were times that, and by the way, I was also homeless as a child, even though I had fairly wealthy parents. And I went through this whole cycle of just hating how things were. I grew up wanting to say hello, or I was wanting to say everybody that passed me on the sidewalk in New York City, hello, hello, hello. And you don't always get a hello back. Like most people nowadays, they literally don't care, right? And this is a tough lesson to learn, especially when, you have a grandfather who's with you, who he's all about the hello, and he gives every single cent of his own to kind of, it. When we lived in New York City, my grandfather could not pass a homeless person on the street. Didn't matter how many times people told him, listen, they're homeless because they're doing drugs or doing that. He would stop and he would put $1 on their pocket if they were unconscious, or he would check them. I mean, how many people check to see if someone's even alive these days, right? But he was that guy. He was that guy who pulled over and stopped. And that was the lesson I learned. This was the person who I last thought cared about me. And when I lost him, I mean, the rest of it just fell away, Anyways, I'm pulling up to Covenant House. I'm there to meet Steve Duran. I go across the street, and I go into McDonald's to warm up, and there's a guy there who is going through a transition in life. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not a political story, and I literally don't want to deal with the politics. I want to deal with the people. This person was, very large man transitioning to be a woman, and it was quite a sight to behold, and very different. This is something I had not experienced as I grew up in Marlborough, Massachusetts. As much as liberal as that state is, let me tell you, it's a very conservative. You don't learn the lessons you learn are very specific to that area of the world, and so. But I met a person, and I got to know this person over about 8 months, and someone who is very full of passion, full of direction, knew exactly what they want to do, despite everything that the world told them they could not do. And as I was going through all my own drama and all my own BS, this person was going through had a very difficult experience. I won't go through more, but I will say that the interactions I had over those 8 months were that gave me some of the most clarity I've ever had in my life about just being a person, right? So ultimately, that morning, I walk across the street, I go see the Steve Duran, and lo and behold, I become a member of Covenant House. And so I have this very sort of poignant discussion. The very first thing they do is, because they have to go through the motions, they try to call your parents and get them to give you $100 for food. Now, a lot of people that are going transition, a lot of young people that are dealing with homelessness or going through some kind of transition in life, it's because they're either dealing drugs or they've been kicked out of their house, or, there's lots of things, right? Very often it's just bad luck alone doesn't put them in that situation. So so he gets on the phone and he calls my parents, asking them for $100 towards food, and through a neutral, they want a $100 donation. And this is essentially a church. So Covenant House is it's a priest, it's a friar, a priest with the Catholic Church. I forget his name. He later on got whacked, for other things, and then Covenant House went through some transition of its own. But my parents said no. They called, and my mother hung up the phone, and she wasn't willing, and that was it. I knew that was going to be the answer, and so but they got to go through the motions, and I will tell you that was it. So, and if you wonder why I then didn't talk to my mother for many years after that, well, there you go. That was some of it. But anyways, here I am at the Covenant House, and very difficult, also very difficult experience. There was a lot of rules to be in that. I meet who is going to be my wife. I go across the street, and there's a couple girls that are also associated with the Covenant House at the time, and one of them is thirsty. I managed to go back and get her a juice, and then next thing you know, we're sharing motels, and we're carrying on, and quite stunningly, she gets pregnant, and that's another story. But so here I am at the Covenant House, and I'm going through this transitionary experience there. And they're working on developing a shelter, like a shelter with actual beds. And I become part of that shelter. And let me tell you that I didn't stay a part of the shelter because I felt like it didn't allow people to, experience it. There's a guy I met. So, God, it's just so hard. It really is. I went. I'm going to tell you a few because this is all. I know that we're getting into the Vegas tycoon thing. I realize that, but I think I don't know how this will ever impact anyone, and I don't know what lessons. And I'm not the lessons I have. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a none of these people. All I had ever hoped was maybe sharing this. I'd hoped to share it with my own son, who's 30 and doing his own thing. But I hope what you come from this is that no matter where it goes, there's always tomorrow. No matter how difficult things are, there's always tomorrow. And it doesn't always work out for everybody. And I arriving here, and now I'm a fairly fairly successful individual with a growing business, and a lot of people. It's been quite the path, and I only got here because of the experiences I had at Covenant House and moving forward. Those are the things that gave me truth. And it wasn't until I confronted all of it, and I met some really, really understanding and accepting people, and this community, of course, where I was able to take this into to the next level and really start to confront, the opportunity. But so the Covenant House at the time was running these vans, sandwich vans or whatever the hell you call them, and quite frankly, you couldn't be found in certain areas of the city, or they would take you off of their roles, and they had very specific rules on how you would interact. So there were some people that were literally cut off of the list of who Covenant House could support. Now I don't know how things have changed, and hopefully they've changed and they've become different now, but. There was this kid that me and Lisa came across on Santa Monica that quite literally saw himself as garbage and threw himself away every day. Literally every day he threw himself away. And when I say threw himself away, he lived in a trash can. He would come out of the garbage can, and I mean one of these big bins that they pick up and is behind a commercial building. And every day he threw himself away. And he was this beautiful kid. And we would go down there and we would help him and we would bring him food. But because of how he was acting out, and I'm sure he was doing drugs, no one wanted to help him. And he was, 16 years old, maybe 15 years old, and he quite literally threw himself away every day. There's another kid that I say me and Lisa because Lisa had one of the biggest hearts, and one of the ways we fell in love is just sort of, despite lacking a lot of passion of each other, we found peace together. I mean, as much as I look back on some of these experiences, they were difficult, yes, but I will tell you that some of the most fun I had was literally having zero responsibility and interacting with lots of wonderful people, especially in this time frame. I mean, I don't know how it's changed now, and I feel like it's become more about the drugs and things like this, but here we are in Hollywood, and we would go down to Santa Monica like many people who are homeless now, especially. It's really overcome. But back then, you could go around under the boardwalk. It wasn't so rampant. The community was much smaller. And we would go there, and there was this kid who we met who had some difficulties, had been doing drugs. And we all moved into a place called the CAF. And this is one you got to look up. I have all these pictures. So if we do another one, I will share with you very specific time frames. Right now, I'm sort of jumping over, and I'm doing the big arc. But I'm more than happy to show you I have collected, curated a lot of the pictures, a lot of the things from the past. And one of the things is on Hollywood Vine, on the northwest side of the street. There used to be a building. It was called the Cafeteria. And the sign ended up becoming all mangled. It was turned into what's called the CAF. And there were the Hollywood Dogs was a gang that lived inside a gang of homeless people who lived inside that building. and they accepted me and Lisa into this building. And we lived there in a room, and every time the Covenant House van would come with their sandwich van and slide sandwiches underneath the doors and stuff like this, if they saw you there, you would not be able, you would be disqualified from their program, their reach out program or their drop-in shelter. So everybody would shut the doors, man. I mean, here is a van of sandwiches coming your way, and you had to close the doors, and they had to send the sandwiches on the door because you did not want to be seen by a group that's supposed to be helping you and helping you figure out where the hell you need to be. And let me tell you, our friend who was not well, who, overdosed while we were there at the caf. And for many hours he sat there. No one bothered to check his pulse because, again, doors were closed because the Covenant House van, you got to close the damn door to get your damn sandwich. And so no one saw him pass away. And tough. Man, God, it's turning into... So not too long after that, Covenant House opens their drop-in shelter. And I agreed to show up. They needed somebody to talk. They had Lily Tomlin coming by. Lily Tomlin, and they had the mayor at the time. And, of course, neither one of these people cares less about Covenant House or helping these people. Least of all at that time. And I've given money and resources and computers as my life has evolved to Covenant House. But I will tell you that if you didn't fit into their program and you didn't, they saw you getting that sandwich in the wrong place, boy. And how do you expect people to come into how do you expect people to all of a sudden be part of this? And they're trying, you got to be in this shelter by by 6 o'clock or whatever it is, right? And you're already dealing with drugs. Like, people need space to heal, all right? Not everybody comes out okay. Some people need a minute to breathe. And if you're always breathing down their neck, how do they move forward in life, right? If you're always setting the criteria, you're always trying to move the bar, how do you set? It's a very difficult space. I don't know how else to put it. But needless to say, I show up, and I'm the spokesperson. And this is where I meet all these TV crews. Fox News is there, CBS is there, everybody's there. We got Lily Tomlin leading the way, because, Lily Tomlin. As they're walking through and taking the tour, Lily Tomlin's talking about a ping pong table she has, and she has this video arcade game. She wants to bring them down to the Covenant House and make them part of this experience. And everybody's very excited. How fantastic. There's not a lot to do. And, of course, the mayor is there, and, you got all the cameras because that's all that mattered is a great publicity. Let's get some votes. It's about the kids or the adults, whatever the hell you want to call it. And let's spend a lot of money and make everybody feel good. But in the end, guess how many ping pong tables, even after calling them many times, we got 0. Guess how many video games that they delivered to that space? 0. And guess how many people followed up with those to make sure that facility was doing exactly what it needed to do? Absolutely no one. And so as much as I was able to contribute, and then I had these reporters. I mean, most of them, they just wanted the salacious details. Remember that kid who threw himself away every day? They wanted to find him and interview him. Somehow I ended up sharing the story at some point and talking about how this should be more inclusive. When they opened that shelter originally, there was like 4 or 5 of us. They were being so selective of who's going to stay in these 100 beds, right? How about everybody? How about we just get a list together and figure it out when they get here and do the things we need to do to make these people feel better about their lives? How about that, right? But instead, we got celebrities, dude, promising video games and ping pong tables and not really giving 2 holy craps about it. So ultimately, I was out. Me and Lisa ended up getting some motel vouchers, and I managed to get to work, believe it or not. I ended up working at the Hotel Hollywood, which is its own story. It was run by this Persian guy who the Canadian bank tried to take it over, and he hired this phalanx of guards to lock the place up. During the day, while I worked at Hotel Hollywood, by the way, on Sunset Boulevard, for any of you familiar with that, I worked at the top floor running the restaurant. I have some fantastic stories. It was me and this one other dude. They had these contracts that they had to keep going. And so we would go out in the day and shop for the food ourselves. I had no idea how to cook. He was the sort of chef, but mostly a prep chef. But together, man, we would put on a show, dude. We had an event. We would get liquor. Apparently, we weren't supposed to get the liquor, but we got the food. We made food. And so we collected. We just had these groups pay cash. So during the day, we would look downstairs, and the guards would be outside with locks on the door. This is no kidding. They literally had this like battle royale between this Canadian group that was trying to repossess the hotel and us. Right. So this was my job. You see what I'm saying? I can't catch a break, dude. I can't catch a break. But anyways, we move into the cafe. I'm working here for a minute, and then we move out to this whole hotel called the Venice King Motel. Dennis has been by there. It's not a very nice hotel. I wouldn't advise you taking a date there. It's kind of gross.
It's not. It's terrible.
So it really is. It's so gross. So when we went there, the owner lives in this. There's a little center apartment, and then there's a little. It's a motel that's surrounded. And a little Asian guy and his wife and family live there. And the last time I visited there, many years ago, by the way, this poor guy had become addicted to whatever drugs he was trying to keep out. And this whole place descended into absolute madness, and it was rough. But okay, let's get to the better stuff. So we moved to this Venice King. Me and Lisa have a lot of fun jumping up and down on the beds, and we stay there until this Thanksgiving. I remember the Thanksgiving because most people knew that we didn't have a lot of resources, and we get this knock on the door one night, and don't you know, there are people outside of our door with plates of food, literally with a Thanksgiving meal. It was quite stunning, man. We didn't know anybody. Like we didn't know anybody. Who the hell are these people showing up at our door? Who's ever seen us like together? But here's all these people on Thanksgiving. When I say all these people, I mean like 5 groups of people who had either heard about us or knew about us. I'm not really sure. I don't know how this became a thing. And me and Lisa, we cried a lot that day. And we had this Thanksgiving dinner with all these people in Venice, dude, of all places. Like where all these, just some random, very random people. And we made the decision then to move. Lisa had been pregnant already, and we made the decision to move out to Garden City, Kansas, of all places. And so her mother lived out there, and so we moved out there to have a baby out there, and ultimately, Devin was born in Scott City, and I took up a spot as a restaurant manager part time. But here's the thing: Garden City doesn't cost a lot to live, and if you don't know Garden City, it used to be, I guess it's moved now, but Montfort beef placking. So if you've ever been to some of these Kansas cities that smell a lot like manure. As you're going through, you can't, definitely they smell. And this is one of those cities, like the whole place. It takes a minute to get used to it, and ultimately it kind of goes off. But I would commute from Garden City to LA to work as a stand-in. So I had met someone who hired me as a stand-in for a number of movies, and I got to work on the one movie I got paid the absolute most was a movie called Men at Work with Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen. And I worked there. It was filmed in Long Beach, and it was right about the time. So right after that movie, he went to do Young Guns 2. And right before that movie, I think it was Quest of the Roller Boys, something like this, that I did that movie as well. And so I got to meet Clint Eastwood came on set. Now, this is back when Charlie, don't sue me, Charlie, we would disappear. Let's just say he would disappear into his trailer, and he would partake, or that was the rumor. At the same time, because I was a stand-in, I got to interact with, because I was Emilio's stand-in. I was also the burger body. So if you've ever seen that movie, I'm the dead guy with the Nixon mask on. So after they kill the regular principal actor, they hire a much cheaper individual, me, to be in the mask and pretend that I'm dead. Which by the way, they had already filmed it. I filmed the end of the movie because apparently the first dude just breathed a little too much, and so they needed someone to breathe less. And I'm like, dude, that's me right here. I could breathe less all day long. It was like $300 a day. Are you kidding me? I would do a lot for $300 a day at that point in my life, not just breathe less. So I work on this movie set. I got to be part of, at the time, and I can tell you, Charlie was had a brochure, and he was buying an SL that got delivered, an SL Mercedes-Benz, one of these older cars that got delivered to the set. and he was going through some shit. And now I had this makeup on my neck because it was a knife wound that cut me. And Martin Sheen came on the set. His, Charlie and Emilio's dad. Martin Sheen came on the set and made some comments about it. I also got to see Clint Eastwood. Now, Clint Eastwood came on the set apparently to do, okay, this is what I heard, an intervention to go see Charlie, because Charlie may have been partaking a little too much, because he would disappear, and, I wasn't there, so I don't know what the hell was going on in the trailer, but let's just say we know the story. We've heard the stories, and we can kind of surmise from there. But it was a very interesting, it's interesting how my life, weirdly enough, as this random background person, an extra in my own life, has turned up in these, because then years later you hear about Charlie having gone through some issues and Clint Eastwood, and I was, you know what I mean? I was like literally right there. So Emilio goes on to film Young Guns, and because I was such a fantastic stand-in, which means nothing, by the way, you need zero skills to be a stand-in, but we're about the same height, the same white, ultra white complexion, I guess. I don't know. So it worked out well. It was it was great because the fog would roll in constantly from Long Beach, and the set would get delayed to these like ridiculous 16, 18-hour days, and you get paid, when you're union, right? You get paid out the kazoo once you get past the normal hours. It was fantastic. But anyways, one of these trips, I end up back in Garden City, and we decide to move. We're not getting along very well with the mother-in-law. In fact, the mother-in-law is a bit of a terror, and I think she has officially lost her mind. She had lost her mind in her past, but anyway, she was a bit of a terror, and we end up moving. We end up getting in a car, my car that I bought. Now, I didn't have any credit. I bought most of the car. And Faye, the mother-in-law, helped me to, for the credit. Co-signed on the vehicle for me. Thank you, Faye, very much. Appreciate that. Needless to say, I drive to L.A. I show up in L.A. early in the morning. I want to play paddle tennis. If you guys are familiar with Venice Beach, they used to have these paddle tennis courts right on the beach. In fact, me and a friend of mine, W.T., who is apparently a musician in somewhere in Texas, we used to sit there on the beach, and he would sell these nickels, this kind of thing. Yes, sell nickels. Sell 5-cent buffalo nickels for like $5. Anyways, my car, I come back to get my car, and it's gone. It's been hauled away. Cops have kind of taken my car, and I can't find my car. Luckily, there's this valet who's literally just waking up and pulling in, who saw the cops, who saw the tow truck take my car. And I'm like, holy crap, like, did I park in the wrong place? No, I did not. And so I'm trying to figure out. I run into a police officer, and, well, first I get to a payphone. I call the yard that towed my car, and they tell me that I was accused of stealing my car. Stealing. Someone called in my car, stolen, and it's wanted for theft. Okay. And I see this police officer, and I'm like, sir, I'm wanted for theft. Can you please take me to my car so we can resolve how I didn't steal my own damn car? And he's like, well, he stops, because if I am wanted for theft, he's going to, take me in. I can imagine, by the way, nowadays how differently this would have been if I was a different person. Can you imagine? I'm literally standing there telling them that I'm wanted for theft. I stole a car, and he's sitting in his car like it's not a big deal. Like, well, we'll take care of this. We'll handle it. No worries, okay? He calls in, and they're like, well, yeah, someone called us the car, and we already got the car, so now I need to go to the police station to get it resolved. And I'm like, okay, well, here, open the damn door. Let me jump in here, and we'll go to the police station. We'll work it out. I'm good to go. He's like, no, you got to walk. I got to walk? I got to walk. I mean, can I say white in America? They're making me walk to the police station? Unbelievable. I supposedly stole my own car, and you're making me walk. Sure enough, it's not a quick walk either. It's about 4 miles away to get to this damn police station. I get to the police station, and by the time I got there, the detective that's handling this case has left for the night. So I literally have to sleep in the lobby. So I have to take a seat, stay there, and come the next night. In the morning, I'm still there in this detective. 18-something hours later. You see the pattern? You see the pattern? You know what I mean? The luck that just, it doesn't exist. So let's just say I ended up getting my car back, strangely enough, because they made a phone call to Faye, and Faye finally agreed that she may have mistook me. And so I'm able to get the car back, and I go back. So I drove back to Garden City, and as I show up in Garden City, my wife is there with our son, who is about 6 or 7 months old at the time, and he's got a bloody nose. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And Lisa's hysterical. And you remember the car that I had, by the way, was a Dodge Spirit. I had a Dodge Spirit, so kind of middle of the road, regular car. I loved it, by the way. It seemed to drive itself fantastic. Drove like a couch. It was great. I pull up, and Lisa's there, and she's like, Faye punched Devin in the face. He's 6 months old. Who punches a baby? Who punches a baby in the face? Are you kidding me? And I'm thinking that there's something else going on. She's hysterical. She's standing there. But the next thing you know, she's like, we got to leave. We got to leave. We got bills. We had just started to rent this little house. And then when I say little house, I mean a 500 square foot little shed. If you've ever gone by into some of these farming towns and you see these little sheds and you think there might be an outhouse, no, someone lives in that. Someone lives in that house. The outhouse is a hole behind that house. You know what I'm saying? That's right. So we get in this. So we're like, you're kidding me. You're telling me we need to jump in the car right now and leave and go. We're going to go back to LA. And she's like, and Lisa, you couldn't say no to Lisa. You just couldn't. It wasn't a thing. So sure enough, now this whole life that I've lived, we just moved into this house. I have a regular job. It's all over. You know what I mean? Well, what do we got to lose? We were homeless like a year ago. You know what I mean? We're living so she had worked it out to where we would go to LA and we would go live with her family in LA. And I, to be honest with you, I don't think we had worked out really anything. But we get in the car with what we were low on resources, let's just say. This whole trip that I had taken to go back and forth was not fruitful. So we get in we get in this car, we're on our way to LA, and we break down on the highway going through Vegas. And interestingly, many years earlier, I had gone by and seen while I was still in the military and seen them building or starting to build the Mirage. And so now the Mirage is built, and it's already open, and we're broke down. And she has a grandmother lives in Vegas. So we called the grandmother to come maybe help us. And when I say we broke down, our tire went out. We didn't have another tire, and we just needed help. We had no money, of course. The grandmother comes out, we get our tire fixed, and we follow the grandmother back to her house. And ultimately, that is, at first, how I ended up in Vegas. But the grandmother we cannot live at the grandmother's house, because the rest of the family has said to them that we are basically homeless cretins. And we can't stay. We stay for like a couple days, and then we have to find a new place. And we move into this motel that's no longer around. So we move in this motel, and but luckily we moved back into the grandmother's. And this is where I get a job at a Burger King and a Porta Subs. I'm working here in Bay. This is my first job, Burger King and Porta Subs. I'm working the night shift at closing that Burger King down. They don't trust me to be on fries, but that's okay because I'm on mop duty and prepping, getting those gross ass frozen burgers out there, and then I'm working at this Porta Subs. So at some point one of the other coworkers comes at me with a knife, and anyways, so one day after my glorious experience living in this house, I have a bike. I no longer have the car. The car has been taken. It has been, I'm not even sure, don't even remember what the hell happened to the damn car. But I have a bike now, and I'm biking from Rancho and Craig, all the way down to downtown. And while I'm downtown, I come across Glitter Gulch. For those of you who remember Glitter Gulch. And a woman comes out, and she's like, hey, come gamble with me. And, pretty lady asks you to come gamble. I got $20 on me. As much as I needed that $20 for everything else I was doing in my life, what are you gonna do? This is the beginning of a new adventure. So I go into this Glitter Gulch, and wouldn't you know, I win a little bit. I win $200 actually. off of my $20, which is big, 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 big. And as much as they try to keep me there, she doesn't understand how much this is going to be changing my life or be impactful. So the next thing, now that I have $200, I'm going to walk down the street a little bit, check out some other places. Maybe I could win another $200. Sure enough, I run into this woman. She has a pamphlet in her hand, and she asked me if I'm interested in becoming a casino dealer. And I told her, I don't know anything about being a casino dealer. Why would I want to be a casino dealer? And she's like, yeah, the pay is great. And, a lot of things that I talk about now. But to be honest with you, this wasn't true back then. Being a casino dealer is a little different. I mean, yes, it was a kind of low rent. I mean, anyways, so I go to this school. I'm like, sure, why not? I start going to this school. I'm still working, but ultimately I go to this school. And wouldn't you know it, I finished Blackjack and Roulette. So I finished Blackjack and Roulette, and then they want to send me out to get a job. I had two choices back then. I had El Cortez or the Golden Gate. So I walked to the corner of Fremont and maybe Las Vegas Boulevard, give or take, something like this. And I start asking people just generally, hey, would you rather play at the Golden Gate or El Cortez? And most people said Golden Gate. And so there I was. I could either go left to the El Cortez or right to the Golden Gate. And so I took a right. I went and saw this guy. His name is Sal Bruno. That's the guy I wanted to see. And our curmudgeon-y, everything you can imagine from Vegas at the time. This older Italian guy with a bad attitude and a bad haircut and less hair. And just curmudgeon-y as they can come. Like, you're very typical, and he's quite the legend. Those of us that went through the Golden Gate and broke in there, I mean, he was a legend. He would yell and do things. I mean, again, I'll have so many stories of my experiences at the gate. It's not even funny. But needless to say, he barks at me and he tells me to go over and audition in Blackjack. And he does it in a way that, hey, go over there, kid. Don't bother me. Go deal some Blackjack and see if you're any good. And so I go over to the Blackjack pit. They put me in on a live game. And I start dealing. I'm nervous as hell. And I'm shaking like a lot of dealers do. And I'm nervous. And I'm laying out those cards, and next thing I hear is some woman says, put it in your pocket. And I'm like, put it in my pocket? And so I happened to have a card in my hand. I was about to pitch. I took the card, and I put it in my pocket. And she said, put it in your pocket, so I put it in my pocket. It turns out she was talking about the tips. Apparently someone had tipped me on the game, but I was so nervous I didn't realize it. And no one taught me, what the hell do you do with the tips? I just thought it was another bet, and I just paid it and moved on. Needless to say, having a card in your pocket, a less than desirable outcome. And so ultimately, the lady told me to get lost. We weren't interested. Actually, she was very nice. Sal wasn't so nice, but she was very nice. Told me to go back to school, learn a little bit more, and then maybe come back later. So as I'm going over to Sal, and because she's telling me, go to Sal, tell him that you need to go back to school, this lady starts yelling out, I need a mucker. I need a mucker. And if you don't know, a mucker is someone on a roulette table that helps you. It's a brainless job. All you do is clean up the chips. So the dealer pushes all the chips, all the losers to you, and you clean them up. You stack them up into neat piles, and sometimes you can help the dealer get the payoffs and get the bets ready, stuff like this. And so she needed a mucker. And Sal goes, hey kid, you got time? And I'm like, sure, I got time. He says, go see that roulette dealer. Go muck a little bit. 4 hours later, this woman, by the way, is a terror. I mean, the whole time she's just like, you don't want to be a dealer. You might kill yourself. It was a very negative experience. You know what I mean? It sucks to be. You could tell that she had been in this business a long time. And at that point, she had ended at the gate, which was like, you know what I mean? She had hoped to be maybe at the Mirage and ended up, at the bottom floor, basement only kind of experience. But so I'm literally not enjoying myself. But as I walk out, Sal comes and brings me aside. He's like, so what do you think? You want to be a mucker, kid? And strangely enough, yes, came out of my mouth. I mean, even after all of this, I was like working the sandwich shop and mopping floors at Burger King, mucking. Dude, I'm in. Where do I sign up? So here I am at, and this is the old Golden Gate. If you go to the Golden Gate now, it's been remodeled and redone. It's a much nicer experience, a whole different experience. When I worked there, 25-cent game, 49-cent shrimp cocktails, and that kind of thing. It was a whole different experience. So wouldn't you know it, I start working there on day shift, strangely enough, because that's when I needed the mucker, and I start mucking this roulette game for the first 2 weeks. So one day, I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling one of the dealers dropped dead at work. I mean, I know it involved an ambulance, and there was, lots of commotion going around, but maybe they just had a heart attack. But my understanding was that someone may or may not have died. I say may or may not because, again, don't sue me. So there was an opening on day shift for a dealer. And, I had already done my 2 weeks mucking, so let me go try my hand. And the key comes over to me, and he said, and by the way, I had really enjoyed dealing craps. I was still going back to the school and practicing craps. I had an absolutely horrendous teacher who taught it like a drill sergeant, which I thought, I already had that experience, the drill sergeant thing. I was trying to move on to the dealing thing. Didn't need a drill sergeant. So here I am. He offers me to start working as a crap dealer, like literally right then. He puts me on the table. I start up on third base, and he makes it sound like this is the epic transformation I'm going to have as a person. Like, holy crap, dude, you're going to upgrade. You're going to go from roulette mucker worth less to, oh my God, you're going to be a crap dealer. It's going to be a huge experience for you. He even prepped me. He literally like, hey, I just want you to know this is a big responsibility. It's a big job. He's like, I'm tough on the crap dealers, but I'll take care of you, yada, yada. He puts me on the table. I look out on the game, and there's like $1 total. There's literally like, I got a quarter over here, 50 cents over here. And really, I needed all that prep for $1's worth of action. And don't you know that that's all there was back then? I mean, yes, the table would get busy, and you would get you would get some people betting 6 bits and higher, but it was basically the cheapest asses in town would come to this game, and I'm sure the El Cortez experience, a lot of downtown casinos had the same experience, right? Where you can buy in for $5. Like half our customers would come with $2 and play for hours, free cigarettes, a cocktail here and there. You know what I'm saying? Like a date every now and then. I mean, it was a thing. I mean, nowadays, $5 is not going to take you very far, sadly. We don't even have any back alley action for $5. You just $5. You need to stay home and nurse that $5 for a while and make it grow. But so here I was working this table. So I made on average $10 a day in tips, and then minimum wage. So it was like 10. Sometimes it would be big fat bills. So the idea was, you always wanted to open that envelope, and you really wanted there to be one bill. Like, you would think you would want it to be a fat envelope, but if it was a fat envelope, that means they had a break of 5, and you had maybe $9. If it was a thin envelope, it could have been a 20. And I think there was a day it even went $50, which was tremendous. So here I was working at this damn casino for $5, $10 a day, something like this. I don't really remember. They would feed you. You got a little coupon. You go up and get your burger, get your fries, stuff like this. And then I would take my tips, because you got money every day, cash money in your pocket. Tough to live on, but still cash money. And then sometimes I would go across the street to the plaza. They had this little video arcade that I loved. They took it out. They put the food court in there now. This little food court. Or better, I had a friend of mine that worked at the Horseshoe, and we go over and hang out in the Horseshoe break area and get high as a kite. That was his thing. It was so stunning to me that this was a thing. I mean, the Horseshoe, if you've heard the stories of Ted Binion, man, I could tell you some stories that will literally. And then there was Sassy Sally's. It was a bar. You would just get loaded. The whole idea was not so much at the gate. The gate wasn't too fond of you taking off and coming back too drunk. But if you worked at the Horseshoe, man, those guys just pounded it. They bellied up to that bar, and as long as you can stand erect for your whole shift, that was the bar, that was the thing, right? And security wasn't allowed to go in the break room, so there were guys getting high. I mean, it was amazing, but that was the start. That was the start of my career. So when I started at the gate, I then moved on to not too long after that, I moved on to the Gold Coast, and when I arrived at yes.
Well, I'm just gonna pause you
Yeah,
there
go
for a
ahead.
second just to
Yeah.
catch up with some of the
Okay.
super chats.
Mhm.
We have Reno gave
Mhm.
us I feel the wealth as I
Yeah.
wash the windows outside the store. That's what he said.
Is he washing the windows really?
He gave us $10.
Jesus, man. We have to give. Anyways, go.
LV DJ gave us $5.
Mhm.
Said, "Holy crap! I hate books, but I would 100% buy David's book."
Mhm. Mhm.
Colt Figure
Yeah.
gave us $19.99. Says,
Wow.
"Love the content. Keep up the great work."
Mhm.
Analyzer Fields gave us
Mhm.
$4.99. Says, "It must be hot in there. Fever is on the roll for the one who could not roll five to save her life."
Oh, really?
Van Lark gave us $5. Didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And then the last one is from Ted. Gave us
Mhm.
$4.99. Said, "Look at you, buddy, dealing out some awesome stories. So happy for you
Yeah.
getting to where you are."
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna fast track this too because I could be here all day. So ultimately, what I'd like to do is, and I'll put this out there. I mean, basically, if we get enough likes and people are interested, I will break it down into its different parts. And I mean, there's a lot of parts. I mean, my time in Hollywood was very impactful. There's a lot of things. That happened. Obviously, Mexico and Guatemala City, you can only begin to imagine. They took my car apart at the border in Guatemala. They wouldn't let me over until I met this truck driver in Texas. And then they put my car together like the guy was the next, Jesus. I mean, it was amazing the things I had to go through and dealing with, the revolution that was down there and some of those options. But anyway, so here in Vegas, so I'm breaking it. So I finish up at the gate. And one of the stories that I know a lot of you I've shared with is, and to give you an idea of the kind of guy Sal Bruno was, and this is before, by the way, before cooties was a big thing, and nowadays, obviously, you're going to hear this story and you're going to go, holy crap, that was a different time. But we used to have this guy, we called him Red. He would always show up in this red jacket. He was a really old guy, and my understanding is he had some kind of cancer, but his skin was very thin, and sometimes it would literally fall off. So he would have what do they call those band-aids and bandages on his hand, and not because his skin would fall off onto the table, and so he had to keep it up. So he would come and he would play with on my side. He was a cranky old man, as you can imagine a cranky old man would be, who is going through these kinds of experiences in life. I once worked at Park La Brea in LA. Among my many, many jobs I've had, I had a friend of mine juice me in. I worked there a little bit, and we had this guy in an iron lung. And the guy in the iron lung would call, and he was angry as a man in an iron lung would be. And so everybody hated dealing with this guy. And you know what, though? I would answer the phone, and he would sit there and talk to me because he had no one else to talk to in the day. And I would leave him, put him on the damn speaker, and just do my work while he interacted. And you know what? He was a little less cranky. But anyway, so we had this guy named Red, and he would come in, and I would deal to him, of course, he would fall apart on the game. I mean, literally, you had to get a little bit of a broom, and they didn't have the portable vacuum technology like they have now. I mean, it was a big thing that they had to bring. So you had to bring the broom and the little pail, and you had to clean up after the guy. I mean, he would try to keep the hands back when he realized it was a big thing. But anyway, so one time Red comes to the table and he starts bleeding out on the game, and I don't see it at first, and he doesn't see it, and he just looks at it, and instead of him feeling embarrassed, he just looked pissed, which, one of those, I guess, is going to work. And I look back and I see Sal, and I say, Sal, we got man down on the layout. And he's like, looks over and he sees it, there's a little puddle of blood. And these are those really old felt layouts. They're really hard, and wool. They were the old wool that would get really hard over time. And you know what Sal did? He threw me a roll of paper towels, dude. And we didn't break a sweat. I mean, those dice kept moving like a fine machine, fine, well-oiled machine. And I literally laid down a few things of paper towel over this area on the table. And live game, dude. Live game. I mean, what did the casino have at risk? Like $3? Like, I don't think I think nowadays, if you're at any well, first of all, nowadays, they would call in like a hazmat team, right? They would shut the game down, hazmat team, spray it down, disinfect it. But, a little blood, what are you going to do, dude? I mean, just throw some paper towels, let's clean that up and move on with life. That was just how it was. But anyway, that's kind of boss he was. You know, there's a lot of people who didn't like him. I loved him, man. I mean, the one great thing about it, he would bark at you like all day long about literally everything. But if a player came over and abused you, he would be right on it too. I mean, he was literally the kind of boss that a lot of dealers don't know that they want, right? That just backs you up and commits to supporting. Because people come to Vegas, they take shots, and let me tell you, at the gate, a lot of shots, just like they did or Horseshoe. Those types of properties, those are the types of players that they come into those places. They look for you to be a break-in, to be less experienced. They take shots, and Sal was the kind of guy who, you know, you wanted. But he would make you cry too. I mean, not me so much, but there were dealers who literally did not last a day with Sal. He was definitely not an easy guy. But anyways, I moved on to the Gold Coast, and go ahead.
No, keep going.
When I started at the Gold Coast, it was transformative. So those of you that have been to the Gold Coast, like, you know, it's a bit of a low end property. It's off the strip, but you know, when I went there, it was like the Taj Mahal, dude. I walked into that place and I'm like, oh my God, look how high the ceilings are. Like, if you go to the gate, it's a bit claustrophobic. Then all of a sudden you're at the Gold Coast and it's this massive thing, and you're like, holy smokes. And they only had 2 bird games, so they had a 25-cent table, and then they had a dollar game that went to a quarter. And then guess what? They had the high limit table. Wait for it, $5. $5 is the high limit table. And if you got on that high limit table, you stood dead all day long. Like, there was nobody playing. I hated the high limit table when there was no players, because there was no players. And it was high limit, $5. Nobody bought it for $100. It was a $20 buy-in, at least where I worked, right? Now, you might be asking me, why didn't I go work other places? Well, I had terrible credit, really. I mean, you know some of the story. I had terrible credit, and back then they would check your credit if you wanted to go to anywhere nice. MGM properties, nice properties, Golden Nugget, that kind of thing. Credit, bad credit, you're screwed. I was a good dealer, and I dealt a lot of 25-cent games, so I was literally bent over working all the time. That's how I got my hands. So if you guys will see me, you know, my hands are pretty good because I work these checks like nobody's business. And so ultimately, I ended up at the Gold Coast, and the stories there, You know, Chuck Norris had an investor. He would come in when he came in one time, and we had T-shirt Joe there, and we had the guy from the Breakfast Club who was as curmudgeon-y as his character was. The guy that was the detention, the adult in detention, the teacher in detention. That dude would show up at the Gold Coast and stroke the hell out of us. That's right. It was like what do they call that? Method acting? I mean, he became a method actor and never let go of that character. That was his character, the supreme ass, the rest of it. And he would come in and he would create some problems for us. I ran into Larry Wilcox, or is Larry Wilcox? It's a Chips Patrol guy, not the Punch guy, the blonde guy. And by the time I saw him, he'd gained a few pounds. He wasn't quite what he was when he was on Chips Patrol. And it was a great, I worked there about a year. I will have to tell you, it was both a very difficult time, and it was also a time of great growth as a dealer. Not so much as a person, but as a dealer, I became a very good dealer. A lot of action. If you go in there now, the place is just constantly busy, and you learn to protect your game, manage your action, the whole thing. Unfortunately, it was run by a guy named Alan Scano, and if you're not already dead, dude, I will help you get there if you need some help. You know what I'm saying? Because he was literally one of the worst bosses I've ever had in my life. Boy, I could tell you some stories about that guy too. But apart from that, the underlings there, it was a Gone property who, if you got a chance to work for Gone, who also owns South Coast, absolutely one of the best bosses, or best owners, I would say, in this business. I mean, I could go on for a long time. If you know, his dad was Jackie Gone, who opened El Cortez, the Plaza downtown, and then together they opened what would be Barbary Coast, and then so Michael Gone had a role in that. Then he parlayed that to the Gold Coast, opened the Orleans, and then sold all that, and then opened the South Point. So opened the South Point. And he has a role in managing a few floors and stuff like this. But if you ever, there's no better casino owner when it comes to, I think, dealers or just in general. During COVID, he pulled money out of his own pocket to keep everybody employed, and he's always been seen as a very fair, very productive person. And these are the kinds of people we love. You know what I mean? These are the kinds of relationships we have. Now, I'm gonna get to the. Go ahead. What do you got? You looking at me? So the rest of the story is very very quickly. I have worked at 13 casinos over this time frame, over 30 years. During that process, um, I went through a period of permanent disability. I had a car run me over at some point while I was getting ready for a fitness contest. Ended up out of play for a little while and built another business as a business planner. I was also involved in. I started a guild called Star Shadow that at one point had 22,000 members, and some years ago, a guy came out to film. It's called Avatars Offline. So that's this David, and I was very active in the birth of the MMO experience from a player standpoint. I built this very large guild that was active in a number of games with quite a few thousand people. And I parlayed that experience to some other businesses that I've had here in town while being involved in gaming as a gaming consultant, a supervisor. I've opened properties in Louisiana primarily. I've opened 3 properties out there, and I've had quite the career. All right, and through it all, I didn't have a whole lot of breaks. I didn't have a whole lot of. There were no free rides for David. David is just pisses everybody off. I toe a line. If you don't know us already, me and Alex have had kind of the conversation, but the personification of my path has always been truth. My grandfather used to tell me that if you don't wake up every day and respect yourself, then don't wake up, right? And that he had a lot of different lessons, but that was one of the lessons, and not for nothing. That was another lesson. Of course, you've heard that before, but everything is not for nothing. But ultimately, that has caused me a lot of consternation. I'm not that guy that stands around the water cooler and talks sports. I've never been all that interested in these leagues that they have on the casino floor. Yeah.
I do want to say, if you guys want to hear more in the story, we don't want to be here for like 3 hours.
All right. How long has it been?
It's been
Hour and a half?
an hour and a half.
Whoa.
I know he's kind of. Yeah.
Wow. Leave some likes. Holy crap. Yeah. So I have quite the story. I mean, CBS wanted to do this. Literally, this reporter in LA would come out here every now and then and do this whole thing. A lot of it stemming from the Covenant House and my experience in Scientology. But obviously, it's been a lot. All right. Well, we'll get to the end. So here's this. I'll give you another 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Give me another 15 minutes. So hang in there. Where was I? What was I saying? Oh yeah. So here's why. I've worked a lot of low end jobs, which I've enjoyed. And but I never got to the point where I had all that much opportunity. I one time had a floral company out here. It's called Vegas Flora. We were wildly successful, and of course, my business partner, God rest his soul, took a truck out. We were picking up fresh flowers to Santa Barbara. We were the first fresh flower weekly delivery service here in Vegas. Can you imagine? We had a lock. You know how many fresh flowers these casinos use? It was a genius business. I wrote the business plan. We got this rolling show. We started delivering fresh flower. Up until then, amazingly, they would freeze them and bring them in from these Central or South American countries and just have them come in bulk. And then they would buy fillers from other locations, but not so much fresh flowers. So we were getting this refrigerated truck bringing fresh flowers in. And of course, I got to pick the one partner that's got an alcohol problem. And on the way back from Santa Barbara once, he breaks he ends up going off the road. He breaks his axle. We rescue him, get him to Vegas in time for deliveries. He falls asleep in the truck, and then none of the deliveries get out. And then ultimately, it was just a cascading effect from there. And anyway, so we got a lot of these kinds of things. But this is supposed to be the we're gonna get to the Vegas tycoon part here really quickly, and then we're gonna try to fill in the gaps. But
And it's okay. We'll probably do this for another stream, guys. So
yeah, we'll do this another stream.
We'll
break it down. We'll have a little chapters, and then you guys can see. You can dissect it for yourself. But I have not always played nice, and in that respect, me and Alex have always been willing to give up a lot to respect ourselves at the end of the day, and that's really how we've when we started this business. You can't even imagine. I'm here right now in a 4,800 square foot location on the Las Vegas Strip. We have 28 employees now. We manage probably 12,000 square feet, and we'll fly past $2 million in gross sales this year. We started at 800 square feet, and with very little real money. No money. There was no money. I mean, we had students coming in. You know what a student paid to come to our school? $500. And in fact, in some cases, we were so desperate for business, they would pay 200 or 300, whatever the hell we could get to get them to stay at the damn school. And when we started this journey, everyone told us we were going to fail. And people were involved with us and have tapped out over the time. And, we have had choices, and lots of choices. We gave up, I would say, arguably $50,000 on a contract because the person that came in to talk with us was a racist asshole. And so we passed and we moved on from that because you know what? It's those are the kinds of choices you make. But this is the one, this is it's hard to explain, but when I decided, there was a point where I disconnected from the past and confronted all the truths about moving forward in the future. And that meant not just sort of doing the right thing, always doing the right thing. Always having, why are we so well rated? Because we go out of our way. We don't sweat the little stuff. When we opened our business for the first year, we lost money. Okay, let's be real. $20 for an hour reservation with someone who we're paying, by the way, $16 an hour, and then the costs associated. So there are people walk into our space and go, how the hell do you guys make any money? It's none of your business. We make plenty of money. We do fine. Because that's the bigger picture. The biggest picture is it's always for the right reasons, right? It's always for the right reasons. And then it's just fulfilling that, creating that demand, creating that utility. Always our goal was to create the community first and let everything work itself way out. And one of the things that has always benefiting me is I've been homeless. I got nothing to lose. I could put it all on the line and literally not care. 3 months before COVID, I sold a condominium. I managed to make a mint, strangely enough. I bought a whole house once during all the money I had, $86,000. I bought this whole condo, strangely enough, when the market kind of collapsed out here, recession set in, and people were just jumping out the window to get off their real estate. And luckily for me at that time, I had some money left over because a car had run me over, and I was disabled in a wheelchair for 2 years. I was disabled in a wheelchair. I'll share the gaming story. At one point in my life, by the way, I had one of the largest gaming guilds on the planet. That's a fact. That's kind of like a weird fact with my life too. But once you see my business planning skills, you'll see how I did this. You'll understand, I think, more of how I got there. But ultimately, we. Okay, hold on. I gotta take a drink.
I got some super chats.
Really?
If you gotta drink some coffee.
God.
So here's a couple super chats. The first one is
so
from
amazing.
Ed.
Yeah.
It says, I feel for you, David. I once had a crap game shut down at the Cromwell when a dealer got a nosebleed.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah. At you. Everybody's who's out.
John G gave us $19.99.
Yeah.
Didn't say anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
One with the Stone gave us $5. Says, congrats on your success, Papa. I have loved your content for years, and I personally could not turn down the cougar on the couch.
The cougar on the couch. Oh, you'd have stayed, huh? I know. I've had a lot of conversations about that couch, by the way. And just so you know, I thought about it for a second. I really did. I did think about it. But I got to wake up. I got to respect myself. I mean, I don't know if I'd have respected it. Could I have respected myself, Dennis? Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's a question.
That's a personal choice.
Why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
But I do want to say, guys, if you do want more of this, we're most definitely going to do this next stream. Mm-hmm. But if you do want to see some of the things that we can't say on YouTube, it is on Patreon. David does a weekly story every week.
Yeah.
On the $10 tier, by the way. And you got any last words, David? Because we are going to add context on the next one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. Are you kicking me off? It's fine. All right. Well, hey, I'm happy to share all of it, dude. I will. I mean, there's all these highlights. I was a member of the National Honor Society as I was a kid. I was in all honors thing. And I was a high school dropout. I dropped out 2 weeks before my high school graduation to bail to Mexico. I actually skipped a grade in high school, and I got to know an amazing individual who worked at Boston College as a professor. His name is Bill Horn, and there's all of these sort of threads. I have this love for writing business plans that I developed through him, and I had this economics teacher. So my goal was literally to become an economist. I wanted to be a business planner. I wanted to help other businesses sort of parlay and create opportunity. I understand utility and there's lots of these things that I get. I mean, you'll find it strange that I became 11 Bravo of all things. So when I entered the military, my ASVAB was 99%, and I can show you that I had, which is you can't get higher. There's only 2 numbers, by the way. There's no such thing as 100. Anybody tells you they scored 100% doesn't exist. Only 2 letters, only 2 numbers, 99. And yes, I was offered a lot of other things. I was not unintelligent. I mean, I was in all honor society. I had these very transformative things. I gave it all up to be nothing. And then I decided to give up nothing to be here and be part of this community and have this journey. And I'm very happy to share it with you in a very real way. I'm not sure I'll ever write a book or anything like this. I'm happy to kind of, deal with it in pieces and share it with you. And maybe there's something there, maybe there's something there for you that we can share and grow together, So, all right. It's fantastic.
I do not want to go just yet because
can I give something away?
Yeah, there's 274 likes.
Holy smokes!
You might want to give that genius.
Yeah, we got to give it away. Yeah, we have a
I would give away the genius hat.
Give away the genius hat.
That's more your hat.
All right, there you go. All right, so genius hat. It's this is one you might have on the mantle. It's a little smaller hat. It's a regular Port Authority hat. But anyways, yeah, we'll give this genius hat away. The word's going to be life. Life is the word. We all have our own life, right? There we go. And there we go.
I'm. By the way, for everyone saying I'm ending the stream for my because I have a Valentine's Day, I do not.
Do what?
Everyone's saying I'm ending the stream because I have a Valentine's Day.
You have a date, buddy? Really?
I don't.
You didn't tell me?
Don't.
Yeah, you do. You do. Come on.
I'm gonna go home right after this.
He's got that cougar. That same cougar, man. She's here. All right.
Yo.
Yeah, yo. Yeah.
As people type life away, thank you guys so much.
Yeah,
I do know the stream got to a little over 400.
Wow.
462 I believe was the max.
I mean, yeah, good. Wow, good stuff.
Make sure to leave a like if you're watching this.
I was so nervous.
If you're watching this after the fact,
yeah,
I would love if you guys can put maybe the timestamps of David's story down below in the comments.
Really?
So thank you so
much.
much.
We got timestamps?
Well, I'm asking them to do timestamps if they get a chance.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, have they done? Is it? Because I know there's a little pause, right?
Wait.
Wait a second.
Wait. No. We just got a super chat. Mm-hmm. Mr. Gus, not this Gus, apparently.
Another Gus? No way.
Here's a deposit on the book. Now you have to write it.
I know. Dude, this guy from LA after Covenant House. So I was involved with this guy. I ran his Lincoln off of a pier. Stop.
1 through 10.
10.
Cult figure, you're the winner.
Fantastic. All right, I'm gonna leave you with this story. You ready? So, a guy hires me out of the Covenant. He sees. So, you guys can look for it. I was on in the LA Times when the Covenant House opened. That's me. There's a guy behind me. I think his name is Scott. And so we were featured when they opened this shelter. And that was then of course we had Lily Tomlin and that whole thing. And some dude saw this picture and hired me. And let's just say he wasn't a very nice individual. And there was an incident where I was supposed to be his driver. And one day I decided to not drive him, just to drive the car. So I took the car to a pier. I spent all his money. And it was sort of payback for an incident that happened. And so that was, experience I had. And some of that became its own story. Because the guy or the kid that I picked up to share this ride with me was the young man who threw himself out every day. And so I felt like, this individual is very disingenuous. He's a very wealthy person, lived on Rosecrans. He was like the silent film star of whenever, who knows. And so I went out to have a very honest experience with someone who could use a day off from life. And so I took this car. I picked up the friend that in the dumpster, and we had a marvelous time on Santa Monica Pier. And back then, you could, I don't know if you still can, but you used to be able to drive onto the pier and then drive over, and there was a little area where there was all the, all the wood, and you can park. Strangely enough, the car did not, I'm not sure what happened with the car didn't actually go in the water, but it had a bit of an issue and didn't want to stay on the pier as well as we would have liked. And instead of confronting it, me and my friend being, homeless and not wanting any, we kind of left it to everyone else to solve that. So there's quite a lot of that. And then being at the CAF of all places, Hollywood and Vine, one of the most famous intersections in the world, had this absolutely famous homeless, degraded, dilapidated shelter, whatever you want to call it. So, anyways, and then yes, the reason I got the stand-in work, there's another cougar, Star Casting. There you go. That's who he was. Oh, I was also a escort for Body Language back in the day. So we'll throw that out there. Just
these
go
are
ahead.
All previews for the next.
That's
pod.
it. We're not going to go into any details, but I worked for Body Language. Yep. And there you go. Tune in next week. All right. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you so much. Bye.
Happy Valentine's, everyone. Bye.
Bye.